Welcome to the January 29th bhyve production user call. We have Andrew, Jan, Philip, Hans, Ed, Legend Finder, and myself, Michael, so far. And I have some great news on a project that's been in the back of my head for over a decade. I kicked off a build option survey with a 64-core Ampere, and it completed in just under 11 hours rather than, say, 3 to 5 days. That is workflow changing. Hans, you mentioned that illumos has just received support for transitional VirtIO drivers. They are, as I understand it, somewhere between the classic spec and a completely new spec. Could you describe what that delivers?
Well,
Thank
they
you,
aren't
Andy.
really in between. They support both interfaces.
Got it.
And the Lumos bug report for that says that modern Solaris or some other systems that ship modern UEFI firmware need the modern interface. So with transitional devices, you can support the old and the new guests.
Okay. What is the state of the new device on illumos? Is there an option to have purely the new spec ditching the old one?
No, not really. I mean, the idea is that the guest driver just tells the device how it should behave.
Got it.
And the guest driver either gets the legacy interface or the more modern one.
Okay. And does that have a broad scope on types of devices, or is it just network and, say, block, and others are to come over time?
Definitely affected pretty much all the device emulations that we have.
Okay. Okay.
But the actual
Paging
changes
through
to the
all those.
device emulation itself wasn't all that big.
Okay.
It's mostly the common VirtIO code that changes
Got it.
to support that new
I think
interface.
one of the advantages of the new driver model is that it supports non-continuous ring buffers, right? So
it has a bunch of new features which we currently don't have. And
oh, Patrick. Great. Well, that is great news. And like you said, it shouldn't be too difficult a port to FreeBSD. Thank you
well,
for
it's definitely
sharing
going
that.
to be work, but it's not
Dare I say
shouldn't
the
be
hard
terrible.
part is done? Anyhow, cool. Any other news to report from your development circles?
Well, I'm working on the CPU ID stuff.
Excellent. And thank you, Foundation, for helping out with that.
And I'm also still working on VirtIO SCSI, getting the reviews done on the illumos side.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it would be nice if someone wanted to review it on the FreeBSD side. So ideally, it goes back into both systems at the same time.
Yes, sir. And those reviews, I believe, are in the doc from about 2 weeks ago. So, work. Please review those SCSI work. So, call to action there. Thank you, Hans. I have just heard back from Emil, who's working on VirtIO FS work, and said, hey, better late than never. I got around to that. I think it's only in a GitHub fork of his, but I believe a review is out there. So let's give this a read. He got past a blocker. And he does have a fabricator diff coming. So watch this space. I had just been gently asking, hey, how's that going? I think I talked to him in Ottawa, and that was pleasant to hear. So we had a great discussion last time about CPU pinning in bhyve and how you can, thank you, Jan and company, about how to retrieve that information as best we can with Procstat and all that. But Antranik said, hey, at the university, we're tired of doing the P64 like a bazillion times. So he just this week posted a review relating to that work, and all are welcome to review it. Let me bring that up.
So I looked at his code. It's fairly straightforward.
Okay.
We'll have to build it to know if there's any
Hmm.
stupid little errors. Oh yeah, that's a trivial fix. That the problem is that the libxo output from procstat for CPU sets lacks one level of nesting.
Yes,
So
sir.
you just get an object with repeated keys instead of an array with of objects per thread. I don't think that Procstat versions its structured output, so there's no good way to make it compatible. It would break anyone who has a custom workaround for the inherently broken output format, where all the threads just are in a single object with sets of repeating keys, which this wasn't tested.
Yeah, and check the last call for a rather humorous moment when we discovered that. It's like, that is not how the output's supposed to work because it wasn't nesting. Libxo. So you're saying he resolved the nesting issue in that review?
Yeah, he added the missing list
Great.
thing. So in the libxo API, how you do this, you create a list and then you create an instance per thread, and that's exactly what he has done. It's like open the list and then open item, close item, open item, close item, again and again in a loop, and then close list. It's
So
true. The patch is trivial. The question is, do we
wait,
value bug compatibility more than correct output?
right. Well, hopefully no one worked out the wrong
So I would
syntax and
say
worked around it
this
rather.
should definitely be fixed in current. I don't know if it should become an errata because first of all, it doesn't affect many people, and potentially there is someone out there who has used this. But yeah, it's such a niche feature to actually programmatically use the procstat output for CPU sets.
Right. So here is the review I was looking for. Saving a whole bunch of command line issues of -p. Uh, it looks like Corvin is happy with this. So from the Cooking with Gas department, and I believe we have the University of Yerevan to thank for supporting this because they requested it and helped out.
Yeah.
Corvin has some comments. This is great news because that was one of those things where people aren't using it because it's not easy, and it's not easy because people aren't using it. That's a circular issue. So
So
thank
here,
you,
what I would
Anfig.
like to see
Yes.
to on top of that as a user is an option to just have bhyve pick from the highest CPU downward the number of CPUs to pin and opt so that I don't have to specify which, just pick from the highest. We could argue that it should become cleverer so that you try not to cross NUMA domains and sockets and so on, but just basically allocate CPUs. And it would be nice if there was at least the option of removing the CPUs bhyve is pinned to from the default CPU set so that there is no CPU contention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would make it a lot less noisy. Of course, that is only for the vCPU threads. It does not uh, affect the M-event thread and the driver threads for VirtIO devices and so on.
Is that a super straightforward bit of intelligence, or would it be a pretty complex algorithm like the mythical ARC management tool that
No, it's not that
anticipates VM launch and
complicated.
all that, where we could never quite come up with an idea of what that should look like? The answer is no, it shouldn't be too crazy.
It shouldn't be too crazy if you're happy with kind of hard coding the policy of if you give it this option, it just picks the highest CPUs from the default CPU user space CPU set, and then removes them before using that for pinning. The problem is what happens if bhyve is killed by a stray signal, or you could at least for a clean shutdown or just an exit handler. But yeah, the problem is that the CPUs would then not be re-added
Hmm.
unless you put it in some kind of external supervisor. But that's no worse than having to statically do this, because then it's always probably removed the default CPU set.
Cool. Any feedback on that? Any questions? Any other ideas of how this could behave? Cool. So here was some remnants from last week when we worked out the logic that led to this review. And here was the, oops, the XML is not nesting. So I'm glad that got looked at within the last week. Great work. So comments were, hey, you can do the pinning from a jail. Do, do we think jail needs a similar syntax to simplify it for the user and operator?
Mm.
That was a grunt.
With jails, you can use a exec.created hook to run a shell script if you want to do something
Fair enough.
dynamic.
This was a question from last week. Can CPU set target a thread?
Yes, that's how the setting of pthread affinity is implemented. You already had the code copied into
Oh,
the
that is it.
document.
So, okay, this was reversed info. That's how the setting. I Oh, for what it's worth, this crossed my desk. Florian has a Prometheus exporter for bhyve and Sylve. I'm surprised it's Sylve related. That's awesome. And also behind the scenes, Hazem is looking at Chuck Tuffley's Smart 8, which came out of a few talks I gave. And boom, there's that. So hopefully we get to use a base adjacent tool for his integration, a bit like what looks to be a Prometheus exporter for Sylve. So Sylve is definitely getting some attention. Ed, thank you for any and all participation you've had in that effort. I'll say it again, Hazem's been a delight to work with and very responsive to input from users. So, and Florian's done, Chiptazy's done some very interesting work across the board, be it in Proxmox, be it in Sylve, be it in, I think it's Box CBSD is his. Anyway, good stuff. That's some fresh news. Also, I was reminded of this bhyve desktop front end in Lazarus slash, was it Python? Pascal, was it? Another goodies, fashionable language. It's receiving attention. It has updates from 2 weeks ago. It is pretty. I don't know to what degree it uses, say, the modern config file behind the scenes, but it looks a bit like virtmgr related to libvirt that Roman's been working on in conjunction with Hazem. So yet another option, and oh, very fresh insofar as he's experimenting with FreeBSD 16. Let's see features, of course, via management. And Jan, I'm curious, of course, what he's doing for process supervision, if anything fancy, different file systems, raw devices, good, zvols, aha, ARM64 support, good to hear, pfnet, and more. That's dependencies from the base. Oh, thank you for listing those. I appreciate that because, things going on behind the scenes can be surprising if something goes wrong and you don't know like what the scope is of what's involved. So bhyve firmware naturally. Do as QEMU tools. the TPM, great. X3RDP, that is interesting. So it might be giving, say, an RDP console to a VM, which is very much a question in the UEFI firmware. And now, of course, ARM, which doesn't have a frame buffer. So and that will be showing up on a list of, say, projects to look at. How do we get something like the VNC or perhaps RDP or maybe Spice frame buffer for, say, bhyve on different platforms? Take a look at this. That's looking quite good with demo. NV64, love it. Okay, with a wiki. So that is fresh, active, and attractive. Any questions about that, or has anyone tried it? No worries. This was simply a comment from last week of like, hey, MinIO tried to use HGPL as both a weapon and a shield at the same time. I do maintain a list of t-shirt ideas, and that might not be one of them, but hey, I have a list nonetheless. From the question at the start of this, does FreeBSD 15 have a notion of meta packages? It very much does in base, and the installer supports them. So here's the history on that. Very, very cool. And from a long time conversation of, well, with things like jail.d and various things.d, where you put your own personal configs into a .d directory so you don't conflict with, say, etc merging on the host. When it comes to passwords following the Mac OS model, it seems that you can use the in-base tools with NIS and YP to, in fact, have like user local handling passwords, and you do need to manage them a little differently, but it's just using NSSwitch, and it's just totally in-base tools. Well, Anshonig was not available to join to discuss either that one or his very cool pinning work, so that is okay. Those are my topics. Do you have anything to share or questions? 2026 wish list items.
Short question,
Yes.
which I kind of answered myself, is that it appears that there's still active development with regards to adding VirtIO VSOC support for bhyve, but it's not yet upstreamed. So last commit on the repository was a month ago.
Do you have that handy? Have your link
I
handy?
put it in the chat.
I appreciate that. Let me look at the chat. Oh, yes, thank you. Boom.
Because that would be another interesting option, especially if we add support for the VSOC in NFS or in other protocols for file system access without having to go through an Ethernet emulation.
Related, has anyone heard from Rob Wing, who had some, I believe, hot pluggable work going a few years back? RW, perhaps, or something. Let's take a look at this. Actually, I will hijack tab. Got. You can see if quite a few going. And I think BMD out of Japan is still also getting some attention. So who do we have? We have Danielle years ago, 2 months ago. Peace.
Mid-December was the last commit.
Well, the holidays can be productive.
If you scroll up, you can see the difference. 43 commits ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Behind, and
Do you have a use case for this?
I could come up with multiple. One of them would be for Cloud Init or New Age Init.
Yes.
Maybe one would be just to have stuff like, I don't know, write a patch to teach Postgres how to use VSOCs so that you can have a secure channel between client and server across virtual machines.
Nice.
Another use case would be NFS support, so that you can have a performant NFS connection between different guests or host and guest without having to do any configuration again. So yeah, there are a bunch of things you can do. Basically, any other thing you want to add as an experimental VirtIO-like device, you can add on top of a VSOC as a protocol you speak over a VirtIO VSOC. So
Yes, that's what it was.
if
And
the other use case for this is stuff like QEMU user agent. I think that supports it too. Yeah.
does it change anything for just a basic console? I believe we have VirtIO console and
And
it
it
help
is, well, a
any.
console is doesn't really have any addressing, so you just have one device. You don't have port numbers and destination addresses, and it's an unstructured byte stream, whereas VSOCs can have datagram sockets or stream sockets.
Got it.
So yeah, there's a chance to use datagram protocols, and there's a chance to have multiple connections, not just a single character device. And by design, kind of a TTY console device is expected to be fairly slow.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Okay. That is plenty in motion. I'm so glad that so much is happening so quickly. Any thoughts, questions, ideas, proposals, requests, concerns? And EdMath, I know the foundation's been very more proactive than ever about getting feedback on the public spreadsheet. I apologize, I couldn't attend that meeting with you and John, I believe Mark. However, you covered all the right topics, so I wouldn't have probably added a single thing. I will give that doc a review, but yeah, thank you for working with Hans. That is huge news. That was intended to be the step one project for a bunch of this, so I'll take it. Anywho, this call is your call. Anything else, or shall we call it good? Daniel, welcome. Hey, do you have anything? Welcome for rolling in here.
Oh, nothing too bhyve today.
Nothing to be Hyvey. And for those keeping score, do check out his comments on Zelta this last two ZFS calls. You have some really cool things in the works. Do you want to do a quick teaser right here and now? We've got a unique audience.
I guess the big things for this audience is it's agentless and centralized now. So it's really good for orchestrating little sort of async cluster workflows from one place. And yeah, just it's really just cleaned up. It's much more professional and uh, just brainlessly easy to use is what I'm hoping for.
Sure.
So
Are things like rotate in this and rebase in this current upcoming version?
Rebase isn't.
Okay.
Rotate actually came out in early 2024.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it is a little it's a little more resilient now, but the rotate, just lets you basically do a 3 or 4 way fork um of of a VM or anything really. And yeah, it'll step through, clone, and replicate it while only dealing with the deltas. So it sort of steps through and does what CFS and dash capital R does, except more carefully. And you can have mixed stuff, like you can have mixed encrypted, unencrypted, recompressed
Nice.
items, and it'll deal with those edge cases. Um, yeah, it's pretty cool. My thing for with bhyve and that is just making sure to test all the different um, operating systems. So I know OmniOS is a uses bhyve as well. So I'm doing a lot of NetBSD to, well, I guess NetBSD doesn't have bhyve, but all the different operating systems, and making sure that the ZFS feature flags and options work with all of those. My bhyve, like one of my wish lists is to have like an OmniOS server and a FreeBSD server, and then just have um, zero monoculture, because you could just run hosts with the same tools on two different boxes, and have the VMs fail over pretty seamlessly.
Mm-hmm. And we have two illumos people on the call at the moment. So yeah, I mean, and a few weeks back we had a great discussion with Patrick Mooney, and oh gee, what does it look like for compatibility? Because there are places where the code is completely separate and they're different OSs and they will always be separate. However, from a user's perspective, if you can send a VM between them with a complete black box behind the scenes, and who cares how it actually works under the hood, well, great. We got, our ZFSs are close enough. Our bhyves are close enough. So yeah. Okay. Thank you, Daniel. Do check out his talk from the October Open ZFS Summit import. It was fun.
Yeah,
Okay,
I have
gang.
opinions, but they're fun ones.
They are fun ones, and they are real world based ones. Great production stuff. Anyway, anything else, everyone, or shall we call it good?
Well, this
Yes.
is Phil. I have a question
Yes.
that just came up when Daniel brought that up.
Please.
Is there a best practice for how to snapshot for recovery of a bhyve that's in a ZFS volume or data set? I mean, right now I would shut down the VM, get a snapshot, back it up, and then I know that I can restart it. But is there, a more efficient way to snapshot, just any operating system that could have, unwritten rights somehow in memory or whatever?
Oh, this is such a great question. So in the VMware world, and not just VMworld, I think it's KVM tools and all this stuff. There's a concept of a system quiesce, which basically makes it um, uh, more crash safe during snapshot. I wonder if that's something that we could add to, or what workflow would make that work best for bhyve.
On the Windows side of things, Windows has their, what is it, BSS tool that enables quiesce unquiesce and can be used for that.
Oh, well, that should
And
be easy.
Windows Server
So,
does a bunch of that for its own whole backup. So they do have their strategies, but it's often file system dependent, but that's just fine if NTFS is on a ZVol, etc. So yeah.
right, ZFS itself, because of how the transactions work, it's, I've had some pretty gnarly crash situations, like databases inside of Windows, which crashed 4 times a day for weeks,
Goodness,
and
yeah.
I mean, just miserable. Just imagine my poor soul
I had,
going through.
but I had done some looking into this on the Windows side of things, and VSS certainly has the concept of that, of doing a quiesce and then a snapshot so fast you can quiesce and unquiesce very quickly in the guest, so it should be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just, yeah. Also, I mean, I think with CFS, it's slightly less of a concern as it is with conventional, right? But yeah, of course, I would love to see a workflow. Would we have to leverage uh P9FS or something to signal it? Like, what would be the ideal way? Or could we use the KVM
Um,
tools
I don't know if
to
the
do
KVM
it?
tools has that built in or not, but something like an agent would be how I would probably recommend doing it.
That's that's worth something in a to-do list somewhere for
Uh,
for funding or foundations or something, because that's probably one of those, one of those sort of enterprisey things that um, that we probably shouldn't leave out for years.
So with ZFS and ZVault, you can just snapshot the ZVol and it's no worse than a power loss on a physical system without the worry of lying disks and so on.
Yes, but what we're saying is we can signal to the guest OS, we're going to take a snapshot, get everything stable on your end, and then it's better than a power loss.
Basically buffer
So the
the writes and
database,
do sync the disks and pause writes.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
acknowledge then once we've taken the snapshots, it's unpaused. Yeah, that's nicer, but again, you kind of have to support the other case too.
Well, I mean, the other case is what we've already got, so I'm not. That's not a new development.
No, it's not. It's just which guest operating system doesn't have a general file system?
Yeah, I mean, okay. So what I was in the middle of that story, like it crashed, multiple times a day for weeks with the MySQL on it, and it did finally croak, but I mean it survived, and I was able to get the database working and exporting. I mean, dumping read only. Even after weeks of this, which was crazy, and it was just Windows on top of ZFS, no magic, no quiescing. So like that is a worst case scenario, um, and it still survived. And these were crashes that could not have been quiesced, by the way. This was due to somebody decided to install some fancy security software that didn't like the memory activity of MySQL and killed it over and over again until the IT,
Wonderful.
until the IT team of course, I had no idea this was going on, but until the IT team finally figured out what they were doing with the box. But thankfully, I ran the host and we lost 0 bits of data, which is just incredible. And that's truly a magical ZFS story. But
So
yeah, but
Daniel, having put a bunch of days of my life into this that I probably won't get back, I created this doc that I've linked there and put in chat about exactly this topic. And it's often databases where you have, a very, if you're lying to the database about what you're doing under the hood on sync rights, etc. There have been over the years these different strategies to like put it in backup mode or whatever special mode and do the things. Like dropped in all my notes, and from things like Windows internals, there was this sort of mythical sync utility for Windows Server, and was available for a while. In the good old days, you hit sync reboot, and hope for the best. And so here was some things on the flush of MySQL and SQLite, and let's see if I get into just Windows more trivial stuff. I did some search, couldn't find anything for Oracle. Don't ask me why I was looking for Domino on Windows and Linux. Looking at you, Andrew. And I just sort of framed it out there, and because I had enough notes on the databases and Windows. Gee, here we go. The Windows strategies, to answer your question.
Oh, that's awesome.
Philip.
Nice.
I don't know why.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking, that if it's not FreeBSD with ZFS, I have questions about what's going to happen with the memory if you do a hard power off. And it's a whole lot harder to think through all of those possible things on random operating systems.
Totally.
Yeah. And I cannot emphasize enough, I believe it was both Jan's and Daniel's point about, well, it's no worse than what you get on a standard box that the 90s onward that you've been updating Windows NT on. Is like, well, if you lose power, you lose power, and we are just overall in a better state. And a snapshot when it's twiddling its thumbs is still probably better than during some crazy update, etc. So go ahead, Jan.
And something else, as long as you don't have any pass-through devices and you build bhyve with snapshotting support, you could take a bhyve snapshot of the guest.
As in memory and everything, truly like,
Yeah,
hey,
exactly.
exactly, I
And then you
know.
can resume
And Windows updates
on the
can
same system at
ruin
least.
weeks for people if they go south like they did 2 weeks ago for me and my client and So yeah, and there was a comment there of like a QEMU plugin, like, hey, what if we say, yo, I'm ready for snapshot? And to its credit, FreeNAS was quite good about VMware integration, where it would do a VMware snapshot of storage and then under the hood ZFS snapshot, and then destroy the VMware one, saying, hey, that was just kind of a transitional little shim. And they integrated with the GUI. They had a, those were good times. Those were good times. Illumos root on ZFS virtual machines. This is just what I found in that research to answer your question, Philip, is you're not the first. Here's a classic sync. Yep. Like it's 1986 again. So if you want to blow your weekend, you can go through these dozens of links, many of which are probably no longer valid. VMware knowledge base articles on it. Sometimes my previous self surprises me. Wow.
You did a lot of work on this. Thanks.
You're welcome, because it's the fundamental question in all of this. We have these tools like ZFS under the hood. Well, let's use them to their maximum extent. Goodness, it just keeps going. How far? Oh, we're at the. Okay, cool. I suppose the sync, there was very much a Windows sync tool. That should, for completeness, that should be in here. I'll do another little search. But yeah, it was like, try to find it. But anyhow, enjoy.
Nice.
And yes, and as Jan points out, obviously sync always should work quite well unless the OS is lying to itself or there's some lying in the process and buffering that you don't expect. And that was an issue with last braid cards, etc. It's like, oh yeah, we're buffering everything. Everything's kind of fast except when it isn't. And oh, you didn't know you were doing that. Too bad. Windows sync. Oh, man. Intervals. Okay, so there's you're bringing back the sort of flashbacks to that. So I hope you find that useful. But what I'd argue, like so many things, like be it replication, be it this quiescing, you want it to be at the application level, because most OSs that are just twiddling their thumbs and lose power will be fine, but it's that the special use cases like Daniel described, with this poor database being slammed by some Reaper. And I think I found
Only thing,
sync. Here we go. Go ahead and here's sync. I will drop it in the chat. I'll drop it in the notes. And it's like, well, wait, can't you just run sync on Windows? But it is from 2016. So Windows sync. So in a perfect world, this would absolutely solve everything. You have SSH into Windows, you just run a sync command, you then never have another problem ever. But I think the tool stopped being supported in some recent version of Windows, but you're welcome to try it. Sync for Windows. And I say that somewhat, my standard snarkily. However, it's like, well, we have communication with the VM. We tell the VM to synchronize. We snapshot it. We move on with our lives. Do report back, Philip, if you find more on that subject, because you're not the first to ask, and you won't be the last to ask. Other thoughts, experiences on syncing VMs or snapshotting with ZFS? And I'll just put you on, hey, sync always is your friend. I'm just fun. Thank you. Paraphrase, it's your friend. That was from chat. Okay, anything else? Yes,
Actually,
sir. Andrew,
one other thought on that.
please.
While not like a file system thing on a guest OS, I don't, you can also a lot of times do stuff specifically for databases, for quiescing and unquiescing things. So that might
Hopefully
be an
my
option.
doc was pretty clear on that for Postgres and MySQL and a touch of SQLite, but if you've got some
I'm sure your doc
bits to
covers it.
add, yeah, but
It looked pretty thorough.
yeah, and one key thing is here the references. These were what you did probably 5 years ago, and there might very much be some newer wonderful things from our upstream databases. So, and broadly for, say, Postgres on ZFS, it's like, oh, you want your write-ahead log on its own data set, and you do this, that, and that, and that. And I've seen that through, say, eventually resolve databases. But yeah, is that what you've seen? Or do you have different databases you can add to the mix? Anyway, give it a read. Hope you find it interesting. And that said, Daniel, would you like the honors?
Like and subscribe.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. I can hang around a few minutes, but that was great. I want to quit while we're ahead because this is such good stuff going on.